All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into something pretty wild that just went down.
Yeah.
The market absolutely tanked on April 4th, 2025.
Yeah, it was a rough day for sure.
I mean, everybody saw the headlines, right? The Dow Jones basically fell off a cliff, like almost 2,000 points.
Yeah, almost 2,000 points.
The S&P and the Nasdaq each dropped over 5%.
It was a bloodbath.
Yeah, it was like $4 trillion just poof, vanished in just 2 days.
Yeah, just like that.
So we got to ask, what the heck happened? What triggered this massive sell-off?
Right.
We've been digging through all the reports and analysis, trying to figure out what went down.
Yeah.
And, well, we've got some thoughts.
Yeah, I think that the big thing, what really jumps out is just how quickly and how violently the market reacted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not every day you see a drop like that. It's not like markets just freak out for no reason. There's usually something pretty major going on. And in this case, it seems like the main culprit was President Trump's announcement of this whole new trade strategy.
Oh, yeah.
He called it a universal import tariff.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, he slapped these really high tariffs, like up to 60%.
Wow.
On goods coming in from certain countries like China.
Okay, so hold on. Let's break this down a bit. What exactly does this universal import tariff thing mean?
Sure.
It's not like the other tariffs we've seen, right?
No, it's not. It's way bigger.
Yeah.
This isn't just about like targeting a specific industry or a specific country. This applies to pretty much everything coming into the U.S.
So basically anything you buy that's imported could be hit with this new tariff.
Pretty much. And that's a big deal because it creates a ton of uncertainty for businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to figure out their costs, their supply chains, what to expect down the road.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's a lot riskier to make long-term investments.
So it's like a ripple effect.
Exactly.
And that uncertainty probably led to the immediate fear of retaliation, especially from China.
Absolutely.
I mean, they weren't just going to sit there and take it.
Nope. By Friday morning, China had already announced their own tariffs on U.S. goods, 34% across the board.
So things escalated really quickly.
Yeah, it went from 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds.
And that rapid back and forth, that's what really changed the game for investors.
For sure.
It wasn't just a little trade spat anymore. It was starting to look like an all-out trade war.
Yep, and that's a whole different ballgame.
And that's what spooked the markets.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be holding the bag when a trade war breaks out.
This whole situation actually really highlights some of the stuff we talked about in our deep dive on the future of American jobs.
It does.
We discussed how these protectionist measures, like tariffs, they're meant to help U.S. manufacturing.
Right.
But they often end up creating a ton of economic instability, raising costs, triggering inflation, squeezing consumer wallets.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we're seeing play out right now in the market.
Yep, it's all connected.
So which sectors got hit the hardest?
Well, tech took a major beating. Big companies with a lot of business in China, like Apple, they saw some pretty steep declines, 7% or more.
Ouch.
And then there's Tesla. They rely heavily on Chinese supply chains for their EV parts. And they dropped even more, like around 10%.
Yeah, I saw that.
It wasn't just tech, though. Companies tied to global trade in general, they got hammered, too.
Yeah, like who else?
Boeing, for example.
Oh, yeah.
They're a pretty good indicator of how international trade is doing, and they plummeted almost 9.5%.
That's huge.
It is.
That's a really bad sign.
Yeah, it shows that people are really worried about what's going to happen with global commerce.
And even the energy sector got caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
ExxonMobil, Chevron, they both saw drops around 8%.
Yeah, oil prices went through the floor because people are anticipating lower global demand if this trade war keeps escalating.
And that means less need for oil.
Exactly.
Which is pretty crazy because oil prices are now at their lowest point since 2021.
It's a volatile situation for sure.
And then on top of all this, you've got the Federal Reserve.
Right.
And their response, or lack thereof, seems to have just made investors even more jittery.
Yeah. Jerome Powell, he came out and said that these tariffs were larger than expected.
Okay.
And that they could lead to higher inflation and slower economic growth.
So basically a recipe for disaster.
Pretty much. And investors were hoping that the Fed would step in and cut interest rates to kind of cushion the blow.
Yeah, like a safety net.
Exactly, but they didn't do that.
And that just added fuel to the fire.
Yeah, it made the whole situation even more uncertain and unpredictable.
This whole thing kind of reminds me of the report, Automation Tariffs and Layoffs, the future of U.S. manufacturing.
Yeah, I see the connection.
That report warned about the risk of unintended consequences with these tariff policies.
Right, like a domino effect.
Saying they might outweigh any short-term benefits.
And they were right.
I mean, we're seeing one of those unintended consequences play out right now in the market, all this instability and fear, and nobody knows what's going to happen next.
It's a mess.
So this is about way more than just stock prices going up and down.
Absolutely.
These trade tensions and the market's reaction to them, they have huge implications for the entire economy.
For sure.
And for global stability, too.
It's a globalized world. We're all interconnected.
That's a good point, and it makes you wonder what other unexpected ripple effects we might see down the road.
Yeah, who knows what's next?
This definitely gives us all a lot to think about. Next time we're going to dive into why bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. might not be the magic bullet for job creation that some people think it is.
Right, because automation is changing the game.
Exactly. But for now, I want you to consider this. In this new world of tariffs, how do we balance our desire for a strong national economy with the reality that we're all part of this interconnected global system?
It's a tough question.
It is.
There are no easy answers.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Anytime.
And to all our listeners out there, keep thinking critically and stay informed.
See you next time.
Catch you later.